Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday. Happy spring equinox as well. We might be a day off on that, but happy spring equinox. And it's Thursday. So we're continuing our series here. Mitch Cumstein and myself are covering esoteric movies, or how about this? Movies set or filmed in Florida and their esoteric rabbit holes, conspiracy theories associated with them. Okay? We've done some big, heavy-hitting movies. Devil's Advocate, Cocoon.
Truman.
What else? Truman Show, big one. Yuli's Gold. Okay, there's another one in there. X-Files. Now, tonight, we're talking about what is said to be the greatest movie of all time. I don't really agree with that, but that's what we're talking about tonight. Citizen Kane from 1941. Oh, yeah, we talked about Caddyshack. That was a good one. Tonight, it's Citizen Kane. And, of course, we've got our co-host here, Mitch Cumstein. What's up, Mitch?
What's up, dude? I'm glad to be here. I would never watch these movies if it wasn't for this series, so I guess I'm expanding my palette, right? And this is one of the greatest movies of all time. Maybe when it came out, right? Because it was a product of its time. So maybe in 1941, this was it. This was a hit because it was, right, on a budget of $800,000, did a $1.8 million. So, but I'm gonna be honest, it was a little bit of a rough watch for me. I had to grind through that. You good? But yeah, we are gonna be talking about Citizen Kane. Interesting movie. You know, it tells a story. It's the reason it's considered the best movie of all time, or one of the best movies, is because of the way that the cameras, the angles were working, the focus. It was ahead of its time, and it really paved the way for cinema after the fact. So it's not like it's the greatest movie as far as like a story and all this craziness, because it leaves it up to the viewer, the person watching the movie, to make up his mind about Mr. Kane, right? It doesn't really tell you if he's good or he's bad. You have to kind of come up with your own interpretation of it. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I did enjoy it. It's not something that I'd watch just for fun if I wasn't doing the show. But yeah, I liked it. Had you seen it before? You'd seen it before, right?
I'd only seen parts before. I'd seen the intro before. My brother told me that it was about Florida. So I went and I checked it out. But also, I didn't really like the movie either. Didn't like it. Don't see the appeal. Again, maybe we're just privileged. Maybe we just take for granted all the ways that it kind of broke ground at the time, but covered new ground, you know, like Juan's saying. Maybe there's techniques and things that it implemented that I don't appreciate, but I didn't really like it. I didn't like the movie, didn't like the story. Orson Welles is a little, you know, he's a funny guy.
Someone said I'm bullshitting that I didn't actually watch it.
I mean, we probably both just finished it, though.
Literally, I mean, I watched it today
Yeah.
because I like to have it fresh on my mind going into the episode, and as I'm watching the movie, I pull stuff up, I learn as I go, and then, like I said, it's more about uncovering the rabbit holes that you find while watching these movies, right? We were talking a little bit about them before we jumped on, and we'll be getting into it here in a little bit.
Yeah. 100%. But people say this was the greatest movie ever made until Lawrence of Arabia came out, which is my favorite movie, and I totally think is the greatest movie there's ever been. But let's just talk about Orson Welles, maybe. That's the main character. I believe he wrote and masterminded the film. I don't know what else he did, if he was involved with the cinematography or not, but
At the age of 25, too, I think he was.
was he? Was he that young? Wow.
Yeah, he was pretty young.
Well, they all looked like 40 years old back then.
Yeah.
When they were 25. But yeah, Citizen Kane. Let's just dig into an overview. Let's get into an overview here. Citizen Kane, starring Orson Welles, I don't know anyone else in the movie, is supposed to be a fictionalized version of the life of William Randolph Hearst, right? Media mogul, newspaper,
Lizard
tycoon.
person.
Yeah, newspaper tycoon. And I think he was a billionaire. I think his fortune came out to $1 billion. Maybe not.
I'll look
Maybe
it up
not.
here.
Maybe not back then, but he was considered one of the world's richest men, or at least America's richest men. And William Randolph Hearst is considered the direct inspiration for this guy. The character that Orson Welles plays, Charles Foster Kane. CFK. Hang on. CFK?
KFC.
Backwards KFC? Oh my God. Hit the
I got you, bro. I got you.
Illuminati confirmed.
CFK?
We got him, boys.
KFC. All right, that's it. Enjoy the show. It's all right. Good show, guys. Everyone have a good night. That's it. CFK, Charles Foster Kane. Okay. Just give me a couple minutes here, guys. The weed's going to wear off. Okay. I'll wake up a little bit. Charles Foster Kane is the main character, played by Orson Welles. And the movie starts off, we're introduced to him, or at least we're introduced to his palace, right? The movie starts off with his death and kind of almost like a eulogy, listing off his life achievements and things like that.
Golf course, too, bro. Look at that. Number 16, 365 yards, par 4.
So we start off seeing the estate, right? The mansion and property of Charles Foster Kane, who, like I said, is supposed to be William Randolph Hearst with a lot of other people spiced in for inspiration, right? And we're going to talk about who else, but Wikipedia mentions Joseph. So William Randolph Hearst is the primary inspiration, but then also Joseph Pulitzer, Samuel Insull, and Harold McCormick. Okay. As well as aspects of the screenwriters' own lives. I'm going to suggest a couple other, how would you say it? Inspirators. Okay. Some good weed. I'm going to suggest some other people who served as inspiration and had a heck of a lot to do with Florida. Okay. Now, William Randolph Hearst, newspaper tycoon, he claims to have started the Spanish-American War, but he was famously against World War One, I believe. And that's a they directly take that and kind of turn that into part of the plot of the movie. Okay, so most of it is about William Randolph Hearst. But also, like I said, some other notable Florida people. Well, the movie starts off showing us Xanadu, which is the house, the home, the big estate with a castle on a hill of Charles Foster Kane. And Xanadu is said to have been like the hometown of Kublai Khan, right? This Chinese guy, right? Was he Chinese?
Probably sounds Chinese. Let me pull it up.
I think he was Chinese, yeah, like Genghis Khan. Okay, not my area of expertise, people. Okay, but
Yeah,
I believe
Mongol led. Yep.
Yeah, Mongol. Okay, that makes sense. Now, also, Kublai Khan, I have to say, sounds a heck of a lot like Kukul Khan, right? And
Mhm.
also sounds a heck of a lot like Ku Klux Klan, which, go check my YouTube videos out, has a heck of a lot to do with the KFC and the KGC. And I did see a lot of links to the KGC in this movie, the Knights of the Golden Circle. For example, Citizen Kane, that's CK, right? And when you see his estate, Xanadu, the gate outside has a K in a circle for his last name, Kane, but encircled. That's the Knights of the Golden Circle. Circle K, Golden Corral, KFC, White Castle, on and
Pleasure
on and on.
Palace.
Crystal with a K. But okay, that's the first rabbit hole of the night, I guess. You can see a K in a circle on the gate. But they're describing his estate, Xanadu. Sorry, it's real loud outside. People drinking.
By the way, this is public domain actually, so we could get around playing it because
Can
any
we?
movies published between 1923 and 1963, the copyright expired, so it is public domain.
Okay. Well, whatever. If you want to let it play with our
Commentary.
here like this. Like this. Yeah, we can let it play.
Yeah, it's considered public domain. Here is
All right, cool. I'm game. Yeah, started from the very beginning.
because I want to talk about these beginning scenes too with that connection that I had told you about. What is it? Neverland Ranch. Also, I saw that on the Wikipedia it says that Bill Gates' house is actually Xanadu 2.0. Did you catch that?
No.
Yeah, so let me pull this up here. Xanadu. I got 1,000 friggin'.
Yeah. Well, the movie starts out with Xanadu. The narrator's kind of describing Xanadu.
Right
and
here.
he's
So Xanadu has been used in recent times to represent the foolish excess of lavish lifestyles such as Kane's. Various celebrities, for example, Michael Jackson with his Neverland Ranch and George Lucas with Skywalker Ranch, interesting, have been compared to Kane. Xanadu's symbolic meaning of a prison built to immure oneself resonates to this day. Bill Gates' house has been nicknamed Xanadu 2.0 in reference to the fictional mansion. And also, I mean, you got Henry Flagler in there. You got John D., which were around this time, John D. Rockefeller around this time. So he could have been talking about all of them all at once, right? I mean, Henry Plant
Yes.
was also in there, so there's a lot of people, a lot of tycoons, a lot of rich people.
Yep. Good point. If you include Flagler's resorts, some of their names: Alhambra,
Yeah.
Alcazar, um, what else? Ponce de Leon. I mean, not too exotic, but yeah, Xanadu from America. So let's talk about some animals. Let's talk about Noah's Ark a little bit. Okay. Noah's Ark in the story, right? Genesis 7, 8, 9, around there. You have the flood in the Old Testament. The flood myth is common to most cultures around the world. It's not just an Abrahamic myth, right? There's cave dwellers who have flood myths. There's people who've never even seen water, okay, or never even seen the ocean who have flood myths, right? Indigenous people, Abrahamic, Hindu, ancient Babylon, right? Pre Bible, whatever. The flood myth is universal, and also many parts of the Noah story are also somewhat universal. So you've got a story about a boat, about humanity being saved on a vessel, typically a boat. And the craziest part is there's very often 8 survivors. 8 survivors in many, many of these stories. So you've got a pretty universal Noah's Ark account. But let's just go with the Bible for a sec. Okay. Thank you, Juan. Yeah. Going off the story in the Bible, Noah's Ark, on my YouTube channel, we've linked to Florida a lot. But if we just look to what the Bible says itself, here, I guess we'll just read it. Go down a little bit. We'll go to where it talks about the. Actually, no. Sorry. You're right, because it talks about the 2 of every animal. So the movie talks about 2 of every animal being on this spot in Florida. They had 2 of every animal, right? Especially peacocks. And so we're in Genesis chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. This better be KJV, bro.
Dude, you already know.
Okay. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female, of fowls also of the air by 7s, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. Yeah, okay. So 2 of every animal, or at least 2 of every unclean animal, right? Kind of the more farm animals, you'd have 7 of each of those. So, but 2 of every animal, right? Coming from the Bible, that's how Noah was instructed to take care of the animals on the ark. Well, a little bit later, I think still chapter 7. Can we scroll a little bit down, Juan? God tells Noah to build the ark out of gopher wood. Gopher wood. No, it's up. Keep going up. Oh, it's in chapter 6, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, at the end of chapter 6. Keep going up. Yeah, keep going up. It's
Oops.
6:14, I think. Yeah.
14 right here. Make thee an ark.
Okay, so chapter 6, verse 14, Genesis. God tells Noah, Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. Okay. We've got to give some shout outs here. Who's ever heard, show of oranges in the chat, who's ever heard of the theory, not only the theory that the Garden of Eden was in Florida, but that Noah's Ark departed from America to Eurasia? Because let's remember, in our Bible, everyone kind of gets the story right as far as Noah landing in Eurasia. But not many people have given much critical thought to where Noah departed from. Noah spent about 150 days at sea, or at least in the ark. A lot of people think 40 days because it rained for 40 days. It rained for 40 days, but they were in the ark for at least 150 days. 150 days, water, right, as high as some of the highest mountains on earth. And we're going to say that Noah landed in the same place that he started? Come on. I think people haven't really just dug into this question enough. We've all just kind of accepted, taken it for granted that Noah landed in Eurasia. So he must have, and most people just don't ask.
You're not supposed to ask questions, bro. It's
Yeah.
un-American to ask questions.
People just don't really dig into it. Okay? Well, there have been a couple people who dug into it. There's a gentleman by the name of E. Calloway, Florida's 1936 Republican candidate for governor, who he was a attorney, a judge, a Freemason, Shriner, and a longtime friend of Presidents Franklin Roosevelt and Herbert Hoover. E. Calloway. He wrote a book in 1966 in which he proposes, right? He asserts that Florida was the original Garden of Eden, or at least that the original Garden of Eden was located in Florida near the border, the state line of Alabama and Georgia, where those two states meet. And the primary evidence why he believed that the Garden of Eden was at the Florida state line with Alabama and Georgia was due to the presence of the Earth's only equal four-headed river system. Okay? Four, just like that. That's how the rivers look. Four perfect rivers. Can you look up the rivers, Juan, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah.
Now.
Juan's got the Gopher wood up on screen too. That's the other important part of this is the Gopher
I'm just
wood.
seeing who it was that discovered the Gopher wood. I was looking a little bit into that.
Hardy Brian Kroom. And he named it after his friend or mentor. Yeah, Apalachicola. Search Apalachicola for river system. Now, yeah, that'll pull it up. You got it. So the Earth's only equal four-headed river system is located right on the state line between Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. In fact, that's where we get the state lines for those states. It's all determined using this. And you're using also some Freemasonic, what's the word? When you go out and you measure large tracts of land.
Topography?
Yeah.
Surveying?
Surveying, thank you. Surveying. A bunch of Freemasonic surveyors went out and came up with all the state lines in the Southeast United States. We have proof of this. The same guys who designed Washington, D.C., chose the state lines for Florida, Alabama, and Georgia? What
Oh,
are
the
the odds?
100%. And
What?
also the interstates, all the numbers of the interstates could also be occult in nature. So that 100% plays a role into everything because that's where you get the parallels and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I believe that.
This area, these four rivers are in the same latitude as the fake Garden of Eden in the Middle East, where they only have two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. There's four rivers here on the state line of Florida, North Florida. Well, in that exact four-headed river system grows gopher wood, the only place on earth where gopher wood grows wild to this day. What else is so special about this four-headed river system? It's one of Earth's greatest biodiversity hotspots. Okay? It's not a rainforest, but it has as much biodiversity as a rainforest. Why is that? Because it's survived. It's an ice age refuge. So things survived there through the ice ages, meaning what grows there now is largely what grew there before the ice ages ever started. So they have million-old plant and animal species. Millions, whatever, millions. Choose your timeline and run with it. I could care less. But as far as what we know old is, this is as old as that. The Apalachicola River Valley area is one of Earth's greatest biodiversity hotspots, Earth's largest freshwater spring, highest magnitude, largest, deepest freshwater spring is very, very close by. Okay? And gopher wood only grows in this area. So you've got the four-headed river system that matches the description of the Garden of Eden. And then the wood that Noah was instructed to build the ark out of only grows along that same four-headed river system, gopher wood. What are the odds of that? This is what led E.E. Calloway to write that book. Here we got a new member, Blue Train. Shout out to Blue Train.
Shout out.
Appreciate it. And then we got Jeffrey Kroom, the descendant of Hardy Brian Kroom, in the house tonight. Okay, Florida royalty up in the house with the very generous donation here. $50 to the Torreya Guardians, or to me, but
The pizza fund.
the pizza Xbox and pizza fund.
Yo, Narco, you mentioned about these various stories about the Noah story. You have Ultrahasis, and you have other various ones. Do you think it's telling the same story, or do you think it's telling multiple stories that the same thing happened? Because a lot of people will say, well, the Bible plagiarized off of stories that came before it and turned it into their own. Where do you stand on that concept of the same story over and over again?
I mean, I think it's the same event remembered different ways. You can get real Jungian with it and say that the flood represents something immaterial entirely, that the flood was the flooding of man's unconscious, that our waking mind, right? Remember, like the wake of a ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also the present, like the present moment, has also been likened to the wake of a ship. You know what I mean? So the wake of a ship, a flood coming up, a boat saving mankind. Jung and some other people like that have linked it to the unconscious, collective unconscious, this universal flood myth. It could be something where I think Jung also talked about alcohol playing a role. That alcohol, the introduction of alcohol into society might have been the flood, that it flooded our unconscious. It blurred the unconscious.
Let the spirits in, you know.
There's a lot of, cool interpretations. But if we're just sticking with the Bible, remember, this is a universal flood. According to no matter whose story, this is like a universal flood. So no matter who's writing it down, it's going to be how they remembered it, right? I'm okay if the Babylonians tell it one way and the Bible tells it a little differently. I think they got the key details pretty much, on the same page. I think the universal flood was real. There are seashells on top of places like Mount Everest, and some of the highest mountains on Earth have seashells, evidence of aquatic life on top of them. So whether that's mass like upheaval and mountains shooting up from underneath the sea, or whether that's a grand rising of the sea level, who knows? But I tend to think that most of Eurasia is telling the same story. And that story is about people coming from somewhere very far away and saving or restoring civilization. Now, here's the kicker, okay? E. Calloway, he was mainly focused on the four-headed river system and the Gopher wood. But he also noticed that many, many of the trees mentioned in the Bible grow native in North Florida. What else did he notice? That many... So he's talking about the Garden of Eden, then he's talking about Noah's Ark. He rightfully concludes that Noah's Ark could not have departed very far from where the Garden of Eden was. Okay, number one, he had to get every single animal onto the ark, or at least two of every kind. Well, where's the best place to get two of every animal? The Garden of Eden, right? It's not explicitly written in the Bible that every animal was present in the Garden of Eden, but you can kind of infer, right, that if there was one place that you could assemble all the animals, it would probably be close to the Garden of Eden. Also, are we so naive to assume that all of the Americas was left out of the Bible? Right? All this activity was happening in the Old Testament in Eurasia, and just nothing was happening in the Americas. I don't know if I buy that. It could make a lot of sense to have the first half of the story in the Americas, then the second half of the story in Eurasia. Well, you can look at the Gopher wood, you can look at the four-headed rivers. Let's talk about pitch too, going back to Genesis chapter 6. What's pitch? Pitch is what you seal a boat with. You finish the wood, you seal it in, you pitch it, right? It's like a finish, except it's like a waterproofing, You slap all this wood together, but you really got to pitch it to make sure no water seeps through. Okay? So God says to pitch it. Well, guys, pitch doesn't just come out of any tree. It needs a certain type of resinous, very sappy tree. Pine, for example, makes great pitch. Pine makes great pitch. The type of pine that's in Florida is some of the best. Florida and Georgia. In fact, some of the principal industries of Florida, Georgia, Alabama was pine. Turpentine. Yep. Resin, rosin, turpentine, tar. Yeah. Pitch. That's pitch. Okay. The American Navy was largely pitched with this pitch. So there's no shortage of pitch in Florida. We have plenty of pitch. Plenty of pitch. And you can go on. So Gopher wood, check. And some people want to know, Where's the name gopher come from? That's not just an English word, guys. Gopher is a direct transliteration from Hebrew, meaning it's an ancient Hebrew word that's only used once in the Bible, right there in Genesis chapter 6, I believe. And then it's never used again. And in fact, it's used very, very little in Hebrew because they don't really know the origin, the meaning. So gopher, spelled with an F, phonetically it's the same as how we say gopher, PH. But back then, they didn't know the gopher. They didn't have the gopher in England. That's an American animal. Gophers are an American animal. Okay? So saying gopher in the Bible and in England, they're writing it in English. They're taking that from Hebrew. So the Hebrew don't know what gophers are either, but they have this word gopher that they're using to describe this wood. Okay. They've never been able to identify it in Eurasia. Cypress, cedar, pine, all of these are described in the Bible and identified elsewhere in the Bible. So we know that it's not that. What is gopher wood? Some people say that gopher also means pitch, that it's a method of pitch. It's the wood that makes the best pitch. Some say that gopher just means the shape that they were building, and they link it to coffer. So gopher, coffer, coffin, cover, gopher, cover, gopher, coffin, right? You see the phonetic root there? Some people think that it just means the shape, like it's a covered boat. You're covering it, you're gophering it. Okay, now keep that in mind because there is a big link to this. You know, we're not just having fun with words here for no reason. Gopher is one of the most mysterious words in Hebrew. Well, then the Americas were discovered 1492, right? King James Version Bible is what, like 1611? They're taking the Hebrew right into English. Hebrew straight into English. Transliteration, not a game of telephone. One off. Gopher, Hebrew word, comes into English roughly right at the same time that the English are settling the Americas. And what animal do they come into contact with? The gopher. The pocket gopher. Thank you, Juan. Gophers are native to Florida. They're native to North Florida. They're native to Georgia, Alabama. Okay? Pocket gopher. But where do we get the name gopher in America? Well, guess what, guys? Gopher is a native Floridian word. It comes from the Muskogee Indians and the Choctaw Indians, maybe the Chickasaw too. Muskogee-speaking Indians used the word gopher with a PH, gopher. And what does that mean to them? It means hollow or dugout. It has a couple different meanings. But the common meaning, the common thread is hollow, dugout, or buoyant. To be buoyant, like light, you know, if something's hollow, it floats, right? Gopher. And that's where we get the word gopher wood, gopher, pocket gopher, gopher tortoise, gopher beetle, and gopher fly. I think there's a gopher fly. There's 5 gopher animals in Florida. And all these are endemic to Florida or the southeast United States. Is there a gopher fly?
I don't think so. Gopher tortoise is one. A gopher tortoise burrow.
There is a gopher fly. Yes, there is. But gopher beetle, you can look up gopher beetle.
Sandhill robbers, is this it? Gopher tortoise council? The Royal Order of the Gopher, bro.
There's a gopher beetle
The
too.
Gopher, tortoise, burrow, robber, fly. What the fuck? You said
Yeah.
gopher beetle?
Yep. There's a gopher beetle. So there's all these animals that have the name gopher, and they're unique to Florida or the Southeast United States, endemic, just like gopher would. So E. Calloway, just for the record, he did not come up with the name gopher wood. He used and repopularized the name gopher wood. Here we got Blue Train here with $20. Appreciate that. Is that for you, one?
No, I'm demonetized, bro.
Oh shit.
I think that's you.
My bad. Gin gin drip drip. Google Earth any mountains. Look for a face. Abomination. A mountain range can be one spine with a monster head or heads. Look for monsters. Not nice looking human. Big monkeys and dogs. Hey man, you keep paying, I'll keep reading. Okay.
What's he's
Hold up.
what?
He's talking about like seeing titans in mountains, I think.
Hey,
I think that's what he's referring to. Appreciate it, Blue Train. Thanks for the membership. Thanks for the $20. Man, this pizza and Xbox fund is looking
you gonna get an Xbox?
pretty
Dude?
healthy. Yeah, I gotta stream GTA 6, dude.
Oh, you're not gonna stream GTA 6, dude. You're not about that life.
Yes, I will. You and I should.
I'll play with you, dude. We can do a Miami Vice Grand Theft Auto series, and then we can make characters that look like the Miami Vice guys.
Hell yeah.
Let me get in here real quick because this guy at the beginning of the movie is talking about the Florida deserts. So he says here, built on an immense private mountain located on the deserts of the Gulf Coast in Florida. And Xanadu is described as being the world's largest private estate. Cost no man can say, according to the newsreel at the beginning of the film. So again, we have this Garden of Eden-esque pleasure palace is what they call it, the palace of pleasure, whatever they call it. And the deserts of the Gulf Coast. Now that stood out to me because how I had told you earlier, I'm thinking, right, there could be various people that this movie is modeled after. You know, maybe he's talking about the reptilian people of their time, but this reminded me of the Lake Wales Ridge, which only certain species of animal live along this ridge. Now, it's this sandy sort of mountain range, if you will. And towards the top is where Bok Tower sits, the highest peninsular point in Florida. Now, what a better place to build, right, the largest private estate on the deserts of the Gulf Coast. So think about that. So there's these sandy dunes, if you will. So almost like a desert, if you will. And you build your tower at the very top of it to oversee everything. So this is where we get into, like, maybe it was inspired by Edward Bok, which we've been there. And it is a very Garden of Eden-like place. He's got his tower. He's got his garden with all his reflection pools and everything. And he was also a media tycoon at one point, right? The Women's Journal that he was the editor for. And that's how he amassed a lot of his fortune. So when I was thinking about this, I'm like, deserts of the Gulf, that sounds interesting. Was Florida a desert maybe perhaps back then? Who knows? Maybe, right? But we know for a fact that the Lake Wales Ridge does exist, where a lot of the quartz that we hypothesize that runs down through here, right, or ran down through here at one point to Siesta Key and all these other places that are, right, that fine quartz sand, which is highly conductive, which we know they use it in various chips and things. And where the hurricane had hit, this one of the latest ones, turned last minute and hit right up through there. So yeah, when I was thinking about this desert, it made me think of this. And there are only certain, let me pull up the animals that are only found there. They call it ancient sand dunes. Florida's ancient sand dunes on the Lake Wales Ridge.
Yeah. Good point, because most people hear desert and they think, oh, well, that can't be Florida. That must be fiction or something.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of my first thought was, oh, did they make, is this like a fictional Florida? But there are dunes in Florida. There are.
And they link it to, they say that back then, whenever that is, this used to be a chain of islands when everything else was, because remember, it's some of the highest points in Florida. It could have been a chain of islands at one point. That's why some of the species of animals only found there are there, because again, when the waters went away, then they stayed in their habitat.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see here. Let me pull up the animals. I don't see the animals here.
But yeah, that area, the habitat is very unique, right? It's like only occurs one place in the world, this type of habitat. And some of it's very sandy, and there's some places you can go digging for crystals, and it's like dunes and dunes of sand, right? Like
Check this.
100-foot tall dunes.
It dates back to 2.5 million years, right? The I don't know how to say that. Plus, I don't know how to say that.
Pleistocene.
Pleistocene epoch. These uplands provide habitat for 21 federally listed plant species. Again, plants only found there. Many of which are found nowhere else on Earth, as well as the federally endangered Florida scrub jay and the state's only endemic mammal, the Florida mouse. Although the Lake Wales Ridge has gained worldwide attention as a global hotspot of rare plants and biodiversity, the notoriety has not served to protect it from human development. Indeed, over 85% of the upland plant communities of the Lake Wales Ridge have been lost to some human land use. So, only certain plants found nowhere else in the world but here. That's crazy, bro.
Yeah, I think they're drawing inspiration, of course, from Bok Tower, like Juan saying, from Ca d'Izan in Sarasota, and then also, it seems, from the Apalachicola River area with the Garden of Eden and Noah's Ark story. They're kind of mixing them all together, but guess what, guys? They all link together naturally. The Garden of Eden in Florida theory directly ties back to Bok Tower. Okay, this is a very deep rabbit hole. We're going to make it back to the movie, I promise. But here, Rock and Rolla with a $9.99. What's up, Rock and Rolla? I'm going to go for it tonight. What does cola mean? Apalachicola and Coca-Cola, red and white. Can't remember which tribe, but Appalachian or similar is giant red-haired sorcerers. LOL. Too many. Yeah, and a mushroom emoji. Thanks, Rock and Rolla, for the $10.
Whoa.
And yeah, also, guys, we're on a bit of a gopher hole tonight.
Gopher hole, yeah.
Yeah, we're going down the gopher hole. Basically, Caddyshack is pretty much all about a gopher too. The whole movie is almost about a gopher. And all right. Well, thanks for the comment. Thanks for the tip. Damn. Oh, that's a good one. Damn, good connection.
Nice.
Good connection, Jeff. Jeff with the 199. Deseret. The way that they say desert at the beginning of Citizen Kane, because there aren't really any deserts in Florida unless you count dunes. Desert could be a subtle reference to Deseret, which is a Mormon concept.
Ooh.
Right. Yeah, let me double check this. Book of Mormon, where it means honeybee. So Deseret was proposed as a name for the U.S. state of Utah. but it means honeybee in the language of the Jaredites, who were a people described in the Book of Mormon. God damn, we're getting tipped to oblivion here tonight. Blue Train with the $20. Anyone out there tripping on a spontaneous awakening? Has anyone stared at the firmament on a crystal clear night? It's polygonal framed, 5-sided sections. All sections were not the same size. Crystal. You should check out Topher Gardner. Topher Gardner is pretty big on domes.
Yeah. Shout out
Some
Topher.
domes and
So another interesting bee connection. I learned recently that the Order of the Illuminati actually wanted to be called the Bee Order.
Yeah.
So again, the Illuminati, but then they settled with the Illuminati. So, but again, interesting connection with the bees. That was Yuli's goal that we talked about the bees, and I did miss this one.
But. Yep. So, and we got 500 in the chat, guys. Thanks everyone for being here. We're talking about Citizen Kane, 1941 film.
Florida probably remember before we move on from the Xanadu connection, because obviously looking into all this stuff for the movie, I did come across Xanadu, and I googled Xanadu, Florida, and lo and behold, I'm sure that a lot of people who have gone to Disney or Old Town or anywhere in Central Florida, in Kissimmee, Florida, remember seeing this particular interesting structure for a long time. And again, I grew up driving past this thing, not really ever knowing that I'd be here at this point in time, at one point in my life talking about it. But apparently it was this sort of futuristic home idea. When Epcot was put into play, their Tomorrowland and everything, these guys were inspired to build this miles away, just a few miles away from Disney, right down the road from them. And it was eventually demolished in 2005. I was going to come on here and say that it's still around, but it's not. But the Xanadu houses were a series of experimental homes built to showcase examples of computers and automation in the home in the United States. The architectural project began in 1979. During the early 1980s, 3 houses were built in different parts of the United States, one each in Kissimmee, Florida, Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. The houses included novel construction and design techniques and became popular tourist attractions during the 1980s. So we have this weird story. The dude who actually built them was later on murdered by one of his friends.
Damn.
Let's see. We have the Walt Disney Company opened Epcot Center in Florida on October 1st, 1982, originally envisioned as the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. So you know that Walt Disney was obsessed with the future, right? A lot of all these concepts and ideas, and perhaps that's why he had his head frozen. But if you look up Disney Frozen, you're not going to get the story of Walt Disney's head being frozen. So Master Fellow Aspen High School teacher Eric V. Walter and Mason decided to open up a Xanadu house several miles away in Kissimmee. It eventually opened up in 1983, so a year after. After several years of research into the concept Xanadu would use, it was over 6,000 square feet, yada, yada, yada. And yeah, a lot of people visited it, but then it was abandoned for a long time. And eventually they were trying to sell it. They were asking for too much. And yeah, there's a lot of abandoned things in Florida. And this was one of those that I particularly remember. And what are the chances that it's called Xanadu and we're covering this movie today? So I just wanted to add that before we moved on from the Xanadu connection.
Oh, 100%. And actually, this ties all together. The Garden of Eden in Northwest Florida, near Apalachicola, and Bok Tower. Guess what? So, talking about the four-headed river system and the Gopher wood, in Florida, that's up in the Panhandle near Tallahassee. It's like I said, at the border between Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. The FAG region. Okay.
That's right.
Now, that is the life's work. This is where we get Howie in the Hills.
Ooh.
Howie in the Hills, Florida. It's a town in Florida named for William John Howie. Yeah, I was right. Which fucking on my shit tonight. Okay. Yeah, so Howie, William John Howie, he's apparently the guy who opened the first orange juice plant in Florida. So there had been citrus juice plants up until him, but there had never been a orange juice plant, orange juice factory.
Midget made orange juice.
Yeah, dude, that's classic merch. We got to get that.
We're gonna get on top of that. We'll have it here soon in a couple weeks. I'll get it done.
And then yeah. So William John Howie, he's a citrus guy. He starts these big citrus driven real estate developments in Florida. He's one of the first guys to get citrus really going in Florida in terms of like people growing their own, in their backyards and stuff. And some people say that he was a kind of like not a scammer, but a little bit of a hustler, But E. Calloway got him to kind of be the face of the Republican Party in Florida for decades and decades. And he owned a lot of land, right? Him and Calloway, they were both into real estate too. Howie bought lots and lots of land. He started his own town and I think became mayor of his own town, I believe. Howie in the Hills. Well, he had lots and lots of land around Florida. Some of his land, and see that Juan right there, he was in the Knights of Pythias.
Yeah.
So William John Howie, he owned the land that would go on to become Bok Tower. So Bok Tower got developed on land that used to be John Howie's. Then it became Edward Bok's, and Edward Bok built Bok Tower. So we have a direct link because E. Calloway was on that land all the time. E. Calloway was helping him. He was his lawyer. He was his right-hand man. He got him.
Wow.
He was like his political handler too. E. Calloway was like his campaign manager, his handler. He got him famous and got him successful in politics. And then after that, he used that experience to run for governor himself, right? But he'd been in politics for a while since he was young. He'd been a delegate in elections multiple times. He'd been I don't know what else he was. I can't think. But yeah, he'd been in politics for a while. And he met this William John Howie guy. They were in business together. He convinced him, hey, get into politics, Let's do it together. I'll coach you. I'll help you. And he was pretty successful, right? He was Florida's best known Republican for decades and decades. During the Great Depression era, he was Florida's greatest known Republican. Well, E. Calloway, like I said, helped him acquire land and was his attorney, his lawyer, right? His counsel through all his business and stuff, represented him in court cases. And John Howie, his land would go on to become Bok Tower. Well, is there anything else linking Bok Tower to E. Calloway and the theory that the Garden of Eden was in Florida? Well, Juan, what's carved onto the door at Bok Tower? Scenes from the Garden of Eden. Scenes leading up to the flooding of the earth. So on the bronze or brass door at Bok Tower, I think it's actually gold. I think they just don't tell people it's gold because someone would try and steal it. But this bronze door has 20 something scenes from Genesis leading up to the flood. It ends with the expulsion from the Garden of Eden, I think. But, this is what's setting the stage for the flood. So you have the beginning of the story there. Then you have birds and animals around, just like Xanadu, just like the movie, Charles Foster Kane, inspired by William Randolph Hearst, but also partially inspired by Edward Bok, the man who built Bok Tower in Florida. He's as close as you get to the real-life Xanadu. Ka Dazan was impressive, but it wasn't up on a private mountain. On a private mountain, in the dunes or the deserts of Florida, like Juan said, that's got to be Lake Wales Ridge. And Bok Tower's on Lake Wales Ridge. This land used to be owned by a client of the man who believed Florida was the Garden of Eden. And the part about him filling Xanadu with animals, 2 of every type, that comes right out of Bok Tower too, kind of. Right? Bok Tower, it said that he tried to import peacocks, swans, flamingos, everything he could get his hands on to make his gardens as beautiful as possible, right? To rival the Garden of Eden. That's what Edward Bok was saying about his Bok Tower and gardens. He was going to say, he was saying, like, this is the new paradise, right? Like the new Eden. It's like better than paradise, things like that. And so he's filling it with all these animals. It's very, I think, the inspiration for Xanadu and him filling it with animals. It's not too unique to have a rich manor and try and fill it with animals. But the fact that he mentions you hadn't seen animals like this since Noah's Ark, that's a direct reference to Florida, I think. Okay. And where else can we take this? Why'd they choose that spot? Iron Mountain for Edward Bok's Bok Tower. Why'd they choose there? Well, let's go out on a limb here. In the event of a global flood, the spot where Bok Tower is would be one of the last points left sticking out of the water in Florida. So you could even say that Iron Mountain itself is a ark, is Noah's Ark. It's got the story of Genesis carved into its foundation, carved onto the door, carved into the building itself. And that building's at the top of the tallest landmass in the area. And can we look up a map of Florida with 50-foot sea level rise? Here, I got one here. Okay. I got a map here.
Here, pull up your screen.
Yeah, that one. Sorry. On the left there. The
This one?
turquoise one. To the left. No, one more to the left. That one. Yeah, zoom in on that one.
It's part of global warming, dude.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. But that demonstrates why Bok Tower was placed where it is. They chose that area not just because it's tall, but because if there were a global flood, and let's say it only went up like 50 feet, right, or like 500 feet, instead of covering the tallest mountains, Bok Tower on the Lake Wales Ridge would be one of the very few parts of Florida sticking out. It would be one of the last parts, if not the last part of Florida, piece of elevation sticking out of the water. It's almost like a time capsule. You see where I'm going with this one? Like
Mm-hmm.
Bok Tower has the information carved into it that
100%. Yeah.
you'd kind of want to know about if the flood took away all the information. Why is there a library there? It's not just a musical library. Isn't that true? There's a private library there of some of the most rare books in the world and things like that.
It's got I think they call it a Carillion music. It's got the largest library of Carillion books. And there is a room owned by a this Chinese corporation. I forget the name of it, but this is the inside of Bok Tower. Very Masonic, if you will. Got the star right there. Got the animals as well. Got the snake, tortoise. Got birds and stuff
Yeah.
here.
Look at the Star of David on the ground. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Freemasonic logo.
100%. This is
Yeah.
how it's broken down. So it's got the bell chamber. You got the Carillion boa, the Carillion library. They say that's what it has. Has music on how to play that particular instrument.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like normal books in there too. I think there is just a
That's what
section.
they're telling us. Yeah, there could be anything. I mean, there could be how to
Yeah.
restart civilization. He's buried right here. So
Right, yeah. Bok is buried at the foot of the tower, Edward Bok. And let's just talk about Edward Bok for a sec. William Randolph Hearst was a newspaper tycoon. Well, Edward Bok, he was the head editor of Ladies' Home Journal.
mm-hmm.
Ladies' Home Journal. And we've talked about this before about some of the conspiracy theories surrounding Ladies' Home Journal. It's one of America's like most successful newspaper dynasties. I don't know what you'd call it. Like Ladies' Home Journal. I don't know if they're still in publication right now.
Could be under a different name. Last I checked, I think they were under a different name.
Okay, they ceased publication in 2016. So they went for a long, long time. Ladies' Home Journal was a long-running American women's magazine founded in 1883 that transitioned to a quarterly publication in 2014 and ceased publication in 2016. So Ladies' Home Journal, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a magazine for women, okay? And why is it so popular? Why was it so influential? You know, yes, women deserve their own kind of media and stuff like that, but I've suspected there's something deeper to Ladies' Home Journal. When I first heard the story about Ladies' Home Journal and about how Edward Bok made this fortune off this women's revolution, Che Guevara, I think he masterminded this. I could be wrong. They came up with a way to send codes over the radio, right? So the guerrillas, the commandos, could communicate with each other across the whole country without their enemy, who's also listening to the same radios, telling what they're saying. They all speak the same language. They're all speaking Spanish. They can't use code like that. They have to get it out. They have to get it out in Spanish in a way that only their people can understand, right? How did they do this? They made a women's like home journal type thing, women's etiquette, a woman's lifestyle radio show, right? It would be like the 1950s equivalent of like a woman's podcast today, right? Like talking about nothing.
With a male host.
But guess what? it wasn't about women's stuff. It was actually code and orders and information encoded into the programming that the guerrillas had a little, cheat sheet code book or whatever. And they'd say, oh, yeah, the women's soccer team scored 2 goals yesterday. And to them, that meant, did he?
Actually, kind of started. Yeah, I had pulled it up here, so he had actually popularized the term, which is the interesting stuff of him when I first started looking into him. So he kind of shifted yes, Edward Bok, editor of the Ladies' Home Journal, is credited with popularizing the term living room by suggesting it as a replacement for the Victorian drawing room or parlor, which he believes should be a space for daily living and family gatherings. So we have this guy who is the Julie. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, it says my connection's unstable.
Yeah,
people are trying to get.
Yeah, Massad's hitting us with another peanut butter jelly scramble.
Let us know if you can hear us good. I don't know if it's you. It shouldn't.
They're jamming our signal. They're hummusing.
The Canadian CI is hitting you. That's what we get for making fun of the $2, bro.
Yeah, we're getting maple syruped and hummused right now instead of jammed.
Oh, man. So, yeah, he did shift the terminology, if you will.
Yeah.
By promoting the living room.
Edward Bok. Yep. He's considered one of the most influential Americans in history. Yes. Edward Bok. So even though you'd think this is just some ladies' magazine, he's changing the vernacular of America. He's he's creating household names. He's very much, this guy has power, right? He's not just talking about girly stuff. Whatever he's doing,
writing too through a magazine.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think that there's something to there maybe being code in his magazine, right? That this magazine wasn't just enjoyed by women on the couch, passing the time. I think this had valuable information in it. But just a suspicion, okay? Ladies' Home Journal. People can go look this up. Che Guevara Women's Radio Show. Well, whatever. People can go look that up. But okay. So, what else? While they're talking about Xanadu, the movie, they talk about his warehouses, about how he's obsessed with hoarding fine goods and statues and pieces of buildings from other parts of the world. Now, this is a direct reference to William Randolph Hearst, and especially, a doorway, archways, 4 walls, and a ceiling. That type of building, the oldest building in the Western Hemisphere or the Americas, is in North Miami. And it goes back to 1133 AD.
That's wild.
1133. Okay. Now, it hasn't been in Florida for that long, or not according to our mainstream history, okay? Who knows? Might have been there all along for all we know. I wouldn't put it past them. There's no pictures of this thing being assembled in Miami. But let's hang on. Let's slow down for a second. The Monastery of Saint Bernard de Clairvaux was begun in the year 1133 AD in Sacramenia near Segovia in northern Spain. Completed 8 years later in 1141. The monastery was dedicated to the Blessed Mother. Can you move that other window a little bit, please? The Blessed Mother, and was originally named the Monastery of Our Lady Queen of the Angels. Upon the canonization of Bernard of Clairvaux in 1174, the monastery was renamed in his honor. A Cistercian monk and mystic, the founder and abbot of the Abbey of Clairvaux, Bernard was one of the most influential church leaders of his time. Cistercian monks occupied the monastery for nearly 700 years. After a social revolution in the 1830s, the monastery's cloisters were seized, sold, and converted into a granary and stable. Is there any more?
Read that. You see that last part, granary and stable. That's so interesting, right? So you take something that was like sacred at one point, and you just turn it into where horses shit, and you stockpile your corn, right? So it's like, screw you guys. We're gonna turn your thing into where we keep the horses,
right?
Cows and stuff.
In 1925, William Randolph Hearst, the inspiration for Charles Foster Kane, purchased the cloisters and the monastery's outbuildings. The structures were dismantled stone by stone, bound with protective hay, packed in more than 11,000 wooden crates, numbered for identification, and shipped to the United States. Soon after the shipment arrived, Hearst's financial problems forced most of his collection to be sold at auction. The massive crates remained in a warehouse in Brooklyn, New York, for 26 years. 1 year after Hearst's death in 1952, they were purchased by two entrepreneurs for use as a tourist attraction. It took 19 months and the equivalent of nearly $20 million in today's currency to put the monastery back together. In 1953, Time magazine called it the biggest jigsaw puzzle in history. Yeah. So they assembled this in Miami, North Miami, guys. It's there. Everyone can go see it to this day. I think it costs like $20 to get in. In 1964, Colonel Robert Pentland Jr., who was a multimillionaire banker, philanthropist, and benefactor of many Episcopal churches, purchased the cloisters and presented them to the Bishop of Florida. Today, the parish church of Saint Bernard de Clairvaux is an active and growing congregation in the Episcopal Diocese of Southeast Florida. Services are held on Sundays and weekdays in both English and Spanish. Yeah, a lot of Spanish speakers if you go here, guys. You might not hear English if you go there. Heads up.
Check this out. He was a mystic and co-founder of the Knights Templar.
Illuminati confirmed.
Yep. Saint Bernard de Clairvaux is considered a co-founder of the Knights Templar. He's especially remembered as a cheerleader for the Knights Templar and a cheerleader for the Crusades. He's one of the biggest voices to advocate and implore Europeans to sign up for another crusade.
Wow.
So he was one of the biggest cheerleaders and war hawks, you could say, for the crusade. He's the guy who, I don't know if he came up with it, but he definitely popularized the sayings, oh, if you kill for God, it's not killing. If you murder, in the kingdom of, if you murder in the Holy Land, it's not murder, things like that. Coming up with these loopholes to convince people to go sign up.
God.
Yeah. But who knows? He's also remembered for being a great, teacher and orator, and definitely a smart guy, sounds like. Influential, charismatic, a great speaker. But it's his monastery, Saint Bernard de Clairvaux. And for some reason, they, capital T, they, decided to reconstruct this in South Florida. Just outside of Miami, North Miami. Why would they do that? It cost them $20 million. Okay, it was completely fucked up. All this, they lost some of the stones, so none of the stones fit back together perfectly. they claim. Juan, can we find some pictures of them piecing this back together?
Right. Good luck, dude. It's probably going to be on some archive website or something. Let me see.
I can't find it. I challenge anybody. I challenge everybody in the chat to go find a picture. Find me a picture of them putting this back together in 1952 or 64 or whatever. That's not that long ago. I mean, everyone had a camera back then. Everyone had a camera. 1960, 1950, 1960. I've looked pretty hard. I could not find a single picture of them putting this back together. Please send it. If you find one, send it my way. I'll post it to Instagram.
Yeah, that's crazy, bro.
Yeah, you'd think for 1950, 1960, for $20 million of work, you'd think they'd want a picture of it. Not a single picture.
Are you gonna give them money if they find it? Because I'll find it, and then you can just send me the money.
No, you're not gonna find it.
All right, challenge accepted. The Time magazine, of course, was the one that said that. Oh! Here we go.
There's pictures of the boxes. Do we have pictures of them putting it together?
Ancient Spanish monastery arrives in Florida. We're getting one step closer, boys.
Oh,
that's it. That's all we got right there.
Pictures. Yeah. Okay. So we got a picture of a lot of boxes. Nice.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not usually the type to say, "Oh, that's fake. We could have never built that," or anything like that. I think the conspiracy might just be that this was here all along. This could be evidence of a Templar presence in Florida.
Oof.
Who knows? Not discounting anything.
Let's see.
I've been there. It's really cool. They've got a ton of stuff, ton of treasure in like the museum area up front, like in the office. It's super cool. The guy there is tiny.
Look at this. This is weird.
Yeah. It's also covered in cats. Covered in cats. They let cats stay there to keep the rats away.
Plenty of pictures of the outside, but as far as pictures of it being assembled, dude,
I've looked pretty hard. I looked hard like 2 years ago, a year ago. Could not find a single picture of them assembling it.
No, it's going to take some digging, definitely. But speaking of ancient places, and speaking of Box and Edwards and stuff, have you ever stumbled across the real Coral Castle, bro? The true Coral Castle?
No.
That was actually just purchased by Lennar, the home developer. And it's under contract. Last I checked, this was a year ago. But so Lennar has the historic Walker's Coral Castle site in Miami-Dade under contract. It would incorporate the structure from 1929 into the community's pool and cabana. This is the Coral Castle in the Redlands, not US 1. Now, what's interesting about this particular Coral Castle, which I'd never learned about. Shout out to this guy over at the abandonedflorida.com. This guy has a bunch of different abandoned places throughout Florida, and he like documents them, gives you the history, takes pictures. So shout out to Bullet. I think this is the guy that runs the site. We should probably get him on the show one day.
Quick glazing, bro.
No, I mean, shout out to, I'm using his stuff. Shout out to him. So
glazing.
Old postcards called it Coral Castle, a local landmark known for its beautiful gardens and distinctive castle-like home. According to some of the locals, the construction of the house was inspired by the sculpture garden of the same name built by Edward Leedskalnin, and some local residents even claim that Leedskalnin himself built the house. In reality, the home was built by Pierce Walker in 1929, 7 years before Edward Leedskalnin moved to Homestead.
This guy built it with his family, right? His family helped him. I could be wrong.
I don't know. He was a retired granite and marble worker, a marble works dealer from the town of Collingwood in Ontario, Canada. He traveled much of the country looking for a place to spend his final years and settled on Homestead, a city of about 3,000 at the time, for its climate and atmosphere. So we usually have this again, coming here to die, coming here to spend your last days, this sort of magnetism, right? He purchased 15 acres of land located on the Redland Road and laid the foundation in January 29 for a 2-story, 12-room castle. He designed the house himself and hired a stonemason to fit a cement into place, several thousand tons of coral rock he had shipped from the Florida Keys and the canal banks of South Dade. So this guy built this house. Same year his wife moved into the Coral Castle, et cetera, and then the latest I saw was that Lennar was they purchased a plot of land it's on for $13.5 million, and they will be repurposing this building in their neighborhood development, if you will, like this whole thing. So they're not going to demolish it. They will be repurposing it, which I found interesting because you know how you're saying, why spend so much money to bring this thing from overseas and to put it together? Well, I believe that when people believe there's power in something, they believe there's power in something. What a more can you imagine what probably took place inside of, for example, that monastery during its time? That, in my opinion, history was probably made in that monastery. So they want to kind of sort of, if we're getting into the occult magical terms, they want to capture that magic. Same to the guys that build on the highest peninsular point in Florida. And if you follow the lore of Iron Mountain, if we're following Edward Bok, talks about some sort of magnetic anomaly that the natives of the area worship because of some meteorite or something that crashed on that mountain once upon a time. All that lore has power, in my opinion, and they want to tap into that source, that current, if you will. And it also serves as a place where they can, if the world was to end at one point or whatever it is, they could survive out there, right? I mean, that's part of it as well. But again, interesting purchase for Lennar, one of the biggest home developers here in Florida, especially.
100%.
Maybe perhaps the true Coral Castle. I don't know.
Well, what's interesting is that the Coral Castle, Ed Leedskalnin apparently never called his castle the Coral Castle.
Ooh.
He had another name for it, and an early name for it was called the Rock Gate. He just called it the Rock Gate.
Very Freemasonic.
Yeah. Also, dude, I think I said this to you for Yuli's Gold. I started going schizo out on the people who've changed their name in Florida and it did 2 E's instead of I-E or Y. So E.E. Calloway made his name E.E. even though his name's Elvie Edison Calloway. He preferred to be known as E.E. for the rest of his life. Ed Leedskalnin, also an Ed, his last name was spelled I-E, Lead. In Europe, when he comes to America, he starts spelling it L-E-E. 33 E-E, side by side. Who else? Moses Elias Levy, his son, David Levy Yulee, revived the Sephardic Jewish family name that they'd thrown away, due to persecution. He revived the name when he became Florida's first senator and America's first Jewish senator, he became David Levy Yulee. But instead of spelling it Y-U-L-Y or Y-U-L-I, like it used to be spelled, he spelt it Y-U-L-E-E. So those are three of Florida's most important people. David Levy Yulee, Ed Leedskounen, and E.E. Calloway. All 33s in Florida. E.E. 33.
Illuminati confirmed.
And then Florida 3-3.
Exactly. Thank you, Juan. Why is that relevant to Florida? Florida's birthday is March 3rd, 3-3. The zip code at Coral Castle is 3333. And the initials for Coral Castle, which is not the name that he came up with, but the name that was applied to it later, Coral Castle, CC 33. Zip code 33033. Okay. Don't lose sleep over that one.
Yeah.
But Coral Castle 33. Maybe the Ringling Circus. And there's other references to the circus. When they're, for example, I think they're making finger like symbols, like hand symbols, hand signs. How do you say this? Making like animals.
Mudras?
Yeah,
Or-
mudras, maybe. Making the shapes of animals out of
Hand
their hands.
puppets.
Hand puppets, yeah, hand puppets. Like a bird, animals, the dog, the dog, however you do the dog. And they say something about the circus or about all these animals being in one place, right? Like the circus. Well, Ka Dizan, I think, is the most direct inspiration for Xanadu. Ka Dizan and Bok Tower kind of mixed in together. On the inside, it looks like Ka Dizan.
Look at that floor, dude.
Yeah,
Checkerboard.
black and white Masonic checkerboard.
Illuminati confirmed.
Checkerboard floor. There's tons and tons of stuff here. I've been to this house 2 times. It's crazy. Checkerboard floor. They had one of the first modern kitchens in America with like full refrigeration, full everything, oven, all that stuff. And okay, the Ringling brothers were all Freemasons. Most of them were Master Masons. John Ringling, the ringleader, was a Master Mason, and they actually ran a lodge for a time. And they got into the circus by decorating parties, theater, like jubilees, balls, banquets, and Masonic theater. They would design the backgrounds of Masonic theaters, and that's how they got their start in show business. Then they got to know the Barnum and Bailey and started the circus, right? Or got into the circus and took it over. But they started doing theater for the Freemasons and designing sets and props for Masonic theater acts. And many of those Masonic plays and festivals would go on in tents outside town. They would have these tents, right? Like kind of like the circus comes into town. The Masons would have one. Well, guess what else? The Shriners, who are headquartered in Tampa Bay, Florida, are Masons. You have to, but the Ringlings were Masons. And then the Shriners, who are Master Masons, they have their own type of circus, right? So the Shriners help run circuses, and then they're also involved in children's hospitals. Creepy, weird. I'm not going to go into that. Total Epstein, Jimmy Savile vibes with the Shriners Children Hospitals.
I think we just got pinged for copyright, bro.
Did we?
Yeah, my shit got taken down.
For what?
for copyright.
What do you mean taken down?
They interrupted the stream.
We're good.
Are we?
I'm still live.
Of course, it was only me, right? It was only me, I guess. Just me.
What
The
happened to
one-on-one
you?
podcast. Yeah.
It's what did we get copyrighted for? The movie?
I guess it said it was public domain. But you're still up. My other channel's still up. Looks
So
like
you got yanked off of live?
I got yanked, bro. Oh man.
Damn, all right. Well, whatever. You got 15 more minutes.
Suspended for policy violations, yeah. Man,
What?
fuck YouTube.
What did you do?
I said as soon as I stop streaming the stuff, it'll come back on.
All right, whatever.
Who gives a fuck?
You just got iced.
I got iced.
Ice is coming for your YouTube channel, bro.
Yeah.
Well,
it's back. Yeah, so don't play that. You're gonna have to probably pull it and just put it on Rumble or something after the fact. Let's not play that. Whatever.
okay. Well, all right. So the Masons are behind the circus as we know it today, with the red and the white color scheme, with all the animals coming in, the African, Eurasian animals that seem like they don't belong in America. There's a whole rabbit hole to that, right? Noah's Ark, Garden of Eden, Shriners being headquartered in Tampa Bay. Also, there's a scene in the movie where he has the door open and you see more. It says city room and it's backwards, so it says more city. More. Like very clear, the word more. You're meant to see it in the movie. That could be a reference to how many of these mansions, manors, resorts had a Moorish revival theme to it. Moorish revival architectural style. But man, what were we talking about?
I don't remember. I got distracted by old YouTube there.
Yeah.
The Kadazan house, the Shriners being Masonic.
Yeah, so Kadazan is the house, the private mansion of John Ringling, the leading brother of the Ringling Brothers, the Ringling Circus, who was a Mason. We're talking about the circus being linked to Freemasonry and the Shriners. But there's a scene in here where they're at like a tent, in kind of like a tent city picnic. I don't know what they're doing, but also, yeah, that's what else is there to talk about? Noah's Ark, Bok Tower, the oldest building in America.
Xanadu ties into again this metaphysical place. Even in the movie, there's the guy talking about comparing it to what was it, Shambhala, or what did he call it? You had told me before we started recording. The cigar guy, this guy right here,
El Dorado.
Yeah, he's like naming off all these things. Like, what do they call it? He's like, I know what it's called. I've known this whole time. Like, he's just trying to throw him off. I guess I don't know.
It does make me think of. It brought to mind. There's a book called 421 or 1421, the year China discovered America. You heard of this book?
No.
Yeah, buddy. 1421, the year China discovered the world. Sorry.
Thought Columbus was Jewish.
Well, this is 1421, so like 70 years before Columbus.
Oh, he was in what, 16 what? No, wasn't it? Hold on.
Who? Columbus, 1492.
14. Yeah, never mind. You're right. You're right. I was thinking 1429. I mixed up number. I'm dyslexic. So it's called what? The year
The year China discovered the world.
America or the world?
The world. No, so, dude, sorry, I don't know. I'm reading it wrong. The title says the year China discovered America, but then the book cover
Mandela
says 1421, the year China discovered the world. So on the cover it says the world,
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
but the book title I think says America. So I didn't get that wrong. That's how I'm reading it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I see it here in this video. It says discovered the world.
Yeah, it talks about maps, America showing up in maps that it shouldn't show up on.
If this map don't stop, boy. This map could get it, bro.
Damn, son.
That fat ass map,
This
bro.
map, I'm trying to.
Baby got map.
Damn, I'm trying to go to school for cartography. Yeah. I mean, this crack is a cartographer, if you know what I'm saying. I'm trying to show me that penumbra, girl.
Yeah. So this is what about China allegedly being the first ones here? Have you read this book?
I haven't read it. I think we had a copy at the store for a little while. But it talks about China discovering America, and it mentions the word Florida is mentioned 41 times in the book. So, you know, I know that much. Haven't read it, haven't dug into it, but it talks about, like I said, America showing up on maps that it shouldn't. All the evidence that China has discovered America or other parts of the world.
Ooh.
I thought that was worth mentioning since they've got Xanadu and Kubla Khan. Well, here let's go down this rabbit hole for a little. Kubla Khan, right? Makes me think of Kukul Khan. If we go to Kukul Khan, right? Also, someone tipped about cola. What does cola mean? I didn't answer that. Sorry. What does cola mean? Well, cola goes back to the cola nut. Cola nut. Coca goes to the coca leaf. So the coca leaf, cola nut.
I'm not going to look that up. Cola nut.
Coca-Cola. But Ola or Ole is a Native American suffix. So Ole, Ola, you see that in guacamole, Apalachicola, Pensacola. It's not just cola. I think it's Ola because it's, yeah. Whatever. Cola. I don't know what it means. Let's look it up. Let's figure it out.
Cola, 1795, genus of small evergreen trees and trees native to West Africa, introduced and nativized in a New World tropics from a Latinized form of a West African name. The cola nut contains much caffeine, carbonated drink in 1919. So they changed again the word, they changed it, right? They add their own meaning to it. So invented in 1886 in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. John S. Pemberton Huh. Cola, the cola nut. Coke.
Yeah. Do we know what the word means though? Like,
A small evergreen tree which is cultivated in the tropics for its seed, cola nuts. So it's a tree.
yeah, I know, but like, what does the name cola mean to the
Oh,
people who named it that? You know?
yeah.
But here, let's talk about his name a little bit. Charles Foster Kane, CFK. Okay. Totally a veiled reference to the KFC. Or sorry, to the Knights of the Golden Circle, the KGC, who would rebrand themselves as the KKK, and then also later on KFC. So Kubla Khan makes me think of Kukul Khan, and I don't know how people haven't talked about this. I think there's a connection between Kukul Khan and the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Isn't that interesting? And the Ku Klux Klan also had a white and red color scheme, like the Ringling Circus, like the KGC, like KFC, Knights Templar. This all sounds ridiculous, right? Right? The Colonel himself, right? Colonel
Right here.
Sanders. Colonel Sanders was a master mason also. Oh, dude, those elephants, totally giving Ringling Circus vibes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Carried in a tower carried by 4 elephants on the day of the battle.
Yeah. Well, Kukul Khan. I'm
This guy.
surprised.
Cool, no.
No. Kukul, Kukulkan. I'm surprised no one's ever talked about how Ku Klux Klan and Kukul Khan.
The Kukulkan is the serpent deity. How do you spell it?
Kukul Khan. Yeah.
The serpent deity?
Yep.
Oh. This one?
Yep.
The feathered serpent.
Yep. The feathered serpent. America.
Ooh.
KKK. Come on. The Grand Dragon of the KKK. Cool Khan.
Is that what they call him?
Yep. You're getting cucked out by your. If someone's getting cucked out, getting dragoned, bro. Dragging their nuts on your face, dude. Get cucked. Kukul Khan. Cuckle Khan. If you cuck, you're cucking the king, okay? The dragon, they call that. Yeah, Drake. Thank you. Yeah, we're all tying it together here, people. Hell yeah.
Whoa.
Grand Dragon. Yep.
Yeah.
Guys, am I the first person on the internet to link Kukul Khan to Ku Klux Klan? And the Grand Dragon, the serpent deity, feathered serpent. America. Who knows? The KGC, what did they want to do? For those who don't know, the KKK came out of the KGC, the Knights of the Golden Circle, who is the Confederate Freemasons. So before the Civil War, the Freemasons in the South rebranded themselves as the KGC, and the Templars too. And they were like the Templars. They were in charge of the gold, the finances, the banking, assassination attempts, all the Lincoln.
We don't condone any of this behavior, by the way, YouTube, just in case, because whatever.
Yep. We don't condone anything.
We hate everyone equally.
Now, the KGC ended up becoming the KKK. And then when that was no longer allowed, I believe they became KFC and the KGC. KFC still brands themselves as KGC to this day when they sell grilled chicken. Sounds ridiculous, right? Until you realize Colonel Sanders was a master mason. Until you realize Wendy's founder, Dave Thomas, also a master mason. Crystals with a K, created because of an experience with a crystal ball.
And who loves fried chicken? Purple
Yeah.
drink enjoyers.
KKK movie Birth of a Nation prominently featured fried chicken, which largely started or fueled the stereotype of fried chicken eating. That's where you get KFC and the KKK. It's
Yikes.
clear as day if you really look into it. But I think we've dug into most everything there is to dig up.
One last question. Like if this
Yeah.
is connected right to the feathered serpent, why would they pick something of a people that they would have otherwise hated? Because wasn't the KKK
point.
like supremacy and things, which we don't condone on any of these channels, by the way, but just a question, right? If you
Yeah.
are about your peoples being the ones, why would you adopt something from another race of people?
That's a great question, Juan. I think the answer is that the KGC, what were their goals? The KGC who became the KKK, remember the KKK were pissed because they lost. The KGC lost the war, right?
Mm-hmm.
But their goal before they lost the war was to take over. Remember, the whole South, much of the South, ran by the KGC. They wanted to take over Mexico. Instead of fighting with the North, they wanted to say, screw the North. We're just going to take over Mexico, Central America, as much of South America as they can take, and much of the Caribbean, with their headquarter was going to be in Cuba. Cuba, Mexico, the Caribbean. I think KKK, it means a lot of things. Number one, it's 33, 11, 11, 11. K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. 11 herbs and seasonings. That good old special recipe, yeah, okay. 11 herbs and special seasonings, yeah. We all know there's more than 11. That's where you get the K and all the fast food and the markets. K, the 11th letter. Well, all of this, remember, their goal was to take over Mexico and Central America, where Kukulkan was a prominent deity. I think that's the grand dragon, kind of points to it too. To your question, why would they want to use that? I think it matched the criteria for the symbolism that they wanted. It's a dragon, and it has 3 Ks in the word. 3 Ks in the word. Yeah, and what does Ku Klux Klan mean, by the way, people? The golden circle. Ku Klux Klan, it means the circle clan. Or
wow.
the followers of the circle clan. Ku Klux. Ku Klux is Greek for cycle or circle. Ku Klux. Cyclical. Ku Klux, right? Kiklos. Kuklos. If you say circle in the Greek way, you get the word kuklos.
And you know what they call Jews?
What?
It also has 30. Oh, it's got 2 Ks in it, but I thought it was 33 for a second. Never mind.
Yeah, we're not going to say that word, but circle K is supposed to be a reference to that. And then, as Shem pointed out to me, another reference. So KKK is 11, 11, 11, 33, but it's also a common Hebrew expression or Hebrew kind of response, or even like a prayer, you would say. It's like saying amen, kind of. You say Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. Triple K. See what that means. A Jewish prayer of praise and affirmation of God's greatness. So it's common, or it was common, to say in Hebrew, to say as an expression, Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. K, K, K.
And aren't most KKK like conservative? Would they be considered Christian?
No, it's actually, dude, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. So, number one, the KKK was said to have been anti-Catholic.
Mhm.
They're also said to have been anti-Jewish, but some of the people who funded and created the KKK were Jewish. As much as we can see into it, because it's very murky and, not a lot of clear, open history, it is kind of suppressed and hidden. And of course, they were hiding it when they were doing it. They're supposed to be anti-Catholic, but they model themselves and take direct inspiration from the Knights Templar. And they're not the first to do that. A lot of Christians think the Knights Templar are cool without being Catholic. And the Templars weren't necessarily Catholic either, depending on how you look at it. But the KKK, who was supposed to be anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, actually has many Jewish members, largely financed by the same Jews who funded the Confederacy. And then they're anti-Catholic, perhaps, but they dress like Catholics with the white and the red.
Mhm.
And the Catholics to this day they have certain holidays where they dress up in KKK looking outfits. And so they certainly take inspiration from the Catholics, but it's supposed to be a white Protestant organization. White Anglo-Saxon Protestant Americans. WASP. It's supposed to be. Yeah. But what else is there to say?
Let's get out of here. I think we've done enough.
Enough damage.
Enough damage, yeah.
That'll be enough of a mess for Mossad to clean up when we're done.
Don't be surprised when they ping your thing off. So just
I'm trying to get my thing pinged off.
I'm
You know what
sorry,
I'm
dude.
saying?
I didn't mean to. Yeah, I literally read it. It said it was public domain.
Well, you can appeal it. Here, Tahuti Asar with another $555 Canadian dollars. Kane's Canada controls America. Author of Simpsons is from Saskatchewan, Canada, same as Elon's mom. The Great Lakes looks like a silhouette of Mr. Burns. Thanks, Tahuti. Chungus 500 with the $4.99. It's my brother. Thanks for doing this one, lads.
Is Mr.
yeah.
Burns Jewish? He kind of looks Jewy, right?
I don't remember.
The voice is the guy. The guy who voices Mr. Burns is Jewish. But is
God
he
bless.
actually?
We love Jews. We love Muslims. We love Palestinians. We love everyone. We love everything. We don't condone anything, but we love everything at the same time.
Speak for yourself. I'm just kidding. So yeah, that's we did pretty good, bro.
I think we got all the information out there. You were talking about doing fucking gumbo.
No, I didn't say. I
Dumbo.
told you that Dumbo, the motion, the action, the live action one, it starts off in Sarasota, the Medici Bros Circus.
Yeah.
So it starts off in Florida and then it goes somewhere else. But I don't know. I don't know if you want to watch Dumbo, bro. How much can we pull from Dumbo? We're gonna be talking about the circus again.
Mm-hmm.
What do people want to see? Want to see?
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna we'll think about it. We'll talk. Willie Gilbert with the $2. Viva Florida. Rock and Roll at the $4.99. Culane, meaning Hound of Coolin. Go Irish. Right, another possible link. All right, everyone. That's it for Citizen Kane. Again, not a ton to talk about in the movie itself, but the beginning and the premise that he built this whole castle private estate in Florida. Okay. Yeah. Everyone have a good night.
Figure out the next one soon.
Yeah, we'll announce it. Peace. Everyone have a good night.
Later, everyone.